retiring on June 30th.
The school committee voted 5-0 not to accept your retirement.
I just
Even
want
when I
to,
wasn't here.
I want to add something quickly on Bill. Bill reopened the little school. It was closed, and my daughter was in the preschool the first year that the little school reopened, so Bill was her principal, and my son attended there. And I think all our schools are great, but Mr. Lassise runs an excellent, tight ship over there at the little school, and I appreciate that. And my kids went through that school, and I think they're the better for it. So I just wanted to
My daughter
say
went
that.
there too, and she loved Bill, and she loved the school, and it was a great experience for her.
Great. Good luck.
Lots of changes to the North Reading school system. This is an announcement this evening. Christine Donahue, the special ed director, will be retiring shortly, and we all know that Mr. Ed Rosmerick has gone on to get the principalship at Lowell High School. We wish everyone luck, especially Ed.
Since Keith has got here, most of the administrative team has left.
Exactly.
If he stays another 2 months, we'll probably have a few more openings.
I'm gonna miss you guys. Well, welcome everybody.
Bill wanted to say something.
I'd just like to say thank you to the school committees over the years. Mara came the same year I came, and to Dr. Trojan and Dr. Manville and the entire administrative team, all the little school children, wonderful, wonderful staff, and the parents, the whole little school community. It really has been an honor to serve, which is something that I like to refer to as my vocation. That was my job. And every day isn't a vocal or choice, but it really is an enjoyable place to go. And I consider it an honor that I landed here 15 years ago, and I was able to finish my professional career here. I'm very grateful to all of you. Thank you very much.
One of my most memorable moments when my son Eric was around 3 years old, and David Troughton called my home. I was the chairman that year, and he always would introduce himself. This is David Troughton, superintendent of schools. And my son Eric yells out, "Hey Ma, it's the Super Nintendo guy." I'm out at night playing video games. My family might not appreciate the work we do, but I know folks here understand the work that gets done with these meetings and budget processes. So, well, we weren't playing video games, Eric. So, well, tonight we're here to discuss next year's already budget for the school system. And thank everybody for coming this evening to get better educated and to answer tough questions. We hope that we have some answers for you. There are a lot of unknowns in our budget. So, Mr. Nelson has prepared a PowerPoint presentation for us, and I'm going to walk us through some of the data that he's collected. What we see here is our enrollment projections, and if you've been in the town for the last 10 years, you've heard us talk about the need for additional schools and space because of that climb that was happening in our student enrollment. And now, despite the little dip, it is projected to level off. And that's a good thing for planning and for budgeting. So, you know, it'll be a new focus for how we spend our dollars once we can grasp our enrollment growth and how it will flatline. We see that in the elementary, it's taken the dip. And that's because these kids have moved on to the secondary levels. That doesn't mean there's extra space or empty chairs in the elementary level. It just means that we did build those buildings according to our needs, and the schools are full. We did not build excess space into our school buildings, but we do have in our elementary the capacity for all-day kindergarten someday and preschool programs. When the budget can afford it, we are ready to put those programs in place in our 3 elementary schools. This is the enrollment at the secondary level because those kids have moved through the system. And this is why you'll hear the building committee talk about the need for increased space in our middle school and high school, as well as in educational space. And this is why a lot of the school committee members are very reluctant to reduce staffing levels at the secondary, because the students have appeared on the scene at these schools, at the middle school and the high school, and we need not only to accommodate reasonable class sizes for those kids, but we need to increase the course offerings as well, so that they stay competitive in their college or their graduation plans. So traditionally, we have a number of sources that provide funding for our school budget. The net education is down 4% from last year. Our local sources are flatlined. Last year, the split between the town and the school was a 67-33. We've enjoyed an awful lot of support from the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee when the need has been identified. The premise right now is that we're back to the 66-34 split. So, we're down a little bit in that area, but mainly because of the increases in fixed costs that the town has got to address, which includes insurance for school staff, which is the largest staffing group, the largest department in town, as well as debt service, which affords the school renovation projects. In our budget, we're in the second year of relying on federal stimulus funds, which will not be available next year. It's created a dependency or a reliance on those funds that the federal government has no plans on coming through next year. And then, it's not a very proud statement to make, but we are dependent on user fees. And if there's a legal way to charge a student a pencil or pen, we would do it. And we're not proud of it, but it does help alleviate the cost of educating. We need classroom teachers. That's our priority. That's what drives quality education. Reasonable class sizes with qualified teachers that are backed up with professional development programs. So we do, to this date, collect about $900,000 in fees for athletics, bus, extracurricular, and full-day kindergarten. What we're hoping to move forward with next year is not a level funding. We don't want the same dollars that we had this year. We want to provide the same level of services, which will cost more money. It will provide similar classroom sizes. It will level fund school expense budgets, which we've been saying since 2003. Our school principals can attest that they haven't got an increase in those budgets since 2003. So what we're hoping to do is to provide the same level of services, and next year there's a couple of things that are in favor for the school budget. First, we have the best contracts going forward. Never again, or never in the past, have we seen the generosity displayed by all of our staff, the teachers and administrators, that actually took a 0% increase for this current year and a 1% increase for next year. I mean, we try as we might. That is the best that I've ever seen. We probably expect increases in those areas in the future. And in addition, we have a significant decrease in our special education costs because we have a number of students that are turning of age where we're no longer responsible for their education, and that saves a lot of money in our special education. So those two have been extremely high expenses in the past for a school budget, are assisting in keeping our budget down for next year. And at that, we're still out of balance by about some $700,000. So we have an annual increase of about 4 to 6% is what we can project the town should be budgeting for school budgets on an annual basis. They include inflation in a couple of minor areas. 80% of our budget is salary driven. So there's another 20% where we can incur costs, but you don't really yield a very large savings from that segment of the budget. We have special education costs, which are mandated, and we can't always predict who's going to move into town or what student might be identified as needing services. We have next year and the year after left in our collective bargaining agreement. We have a heavy reliance on revolving funds, which are also another one-time monies. And I'll speak to that later, how we're going to go to one of our special ed revolving accounts and draw down $100,000, which took about 3 or 4 years to save. So definitely will be available for next year. As a lot of people know who've been following the school committee and Stand for Children and North Reading United for Education, the funding formula is broken. Not just at our local level, where we try very hard in cooperation with our finance and board of selectmen, but it's the Chapter 70 formula that comes to us from the state, and there are a number of issues we have with how suburban towns like North Reading are funded, and how our own peculiarities are not identified and not reimbursed for. So I would just encourage everybody to continue to follow Stand and NRU to see some changes in those areas. So here we are at our level services budget. We would carry forward $23,698, and we definitely need to close that gap. So the first round of reductions that will not impact classroom instruction would be to eliminate the small capital, which is $156,000. It includes textbooks and some smart boards. Certainly, the smart boards can hold off, but the textbooks, we have a replacement cycle, and those textbooks are desperately needed. It would be my hope that in October, if there is funding available, that the textbooks would be brought before town meeting for approval. It's not ideal not to have them in September, but it's better than not having them at all. We have the special ed collaborative scene. There is a balance that took about 3 or 4 years to generate of $100,000. It is within North Reading's purview to transfer that money to offset special education costs. We will do that. That will not be available next year, however. We do have some retiree attrition. We did this once before, and we heard loud and clear from parents that this is not a desirable way to save money in the budget. However, in an effort to close the gap, we are once again looking at hiring at a lower level on the salary scale for any new positions. We will always put a qualified teacher in the classroom. However, we will look at not only the qualifications, but the cost of that teacher as well, in considering hiring staff that will be replacing retirees. We have a carryover available for our circuit breaker fund of $25,000. And we have some funding at the end of this budget cycle of about $40,000 that we will use to pre-purchase supplies in advance of next year. In doing that, those funds won't be available next year either. All of these savings bring our budget gap from $744,600 down to about $324,000. That's the gap we are at, with nowhere else to turn to but staffing levels. We have a priority when it comes to reducing staff. Teachers will go last, but we do need to keep the buildings running, and we do need to keep support staff available for teachers. And so, in order to bridge that gap in no priority order, these are the items that are being considered. In order to fill the gap, it could be an equivalent of 6 teachers. And I'll speak more to that in a minute. We would look to eliminate 1 custodian. Potential impact could be that the buildings would not be available evenings or weekends for the town or other outside groups to use. Right now there is a user fee, but it does not support an entire custodian's position. So in eliminating a custodian and dedicating their time to when students need the buildings cleaned, we could see the buildings not available to the community. We're not really sure what that schedule would look like, but it would be a decreased availability. We would look to decrease approximately 3.5 paraprofessionals, and we have to be careful because Large majority of our paraprofessionals are assigned to students under an education plan. We cannot